那我们山东威海的王慧呢，他讲说用心熏法，福慧双修。他讲到的是3月23的时候， 听到马来西亚的这个陈继廷师兄，他觉得他超帅的，同时间也透过他的一个经历的时候，更去了解到我们的点点滴滴里面哈。
And this is their feedback after listening to the different sharing from previous shows.
然后跟着庄奴老师呢，这样子学作曲，15年的一个当中学到了一个精髓，所以呢，把这样的环保志工的新香年，还有很多好歌给传染过来哈。那我们在云南的徐小明，他说法入心，感动人心哈。在这个当下，
徐小明 is from Yunnan,
他讲
China.
到他自己木心木爱这一个部分，也要持续来加油努力哈。那在这一个地方，他一样讲到罗恒言的好歌传散法这个部分，还有包括了冬梅
she was very touched and listening to one of the brother sharing about Dharma.
我们昆山的宗牧会串联爱这个部分，他讲到了就是当他看到大爱台3月30号，有关于呢就是这样的一个。
周末会 is also from China.
串联爱串联的时候，包括石金文金的大爱纪录片《残缺的完整的爱》，让他想起他从2004年到现在一直参加昆山的爱心学校，然后每年一次一会，看到那些孩子的成长，他觉得可以走入人家的一个生命里，感动生命。用生命来感动生命是很感动的一件事。那接下来大家可以看到画面上我出现的画面。
As a volunteer.
这是澳洲雪梨，所以澳洲雪梨地方
This is in Australia.
我们团队大家一起来，各个是人才哈。那澳洲雪梨我不晓得你有没有去过，那现在我要让您看一下这个画面哈。我个人因为有去过澳洲雪梨。
So for the next session, we're actually going to be inviting as our speaker one of our very own volunteers who does oral translation, written translation, and has supported with programming as well for our weekly book studies. So that's Sister Chen Huiling. So let's take a look at her story.
那个案的陪伴真的是就是这样子，即便在一个雪梨非常富有的家，可是他的先生可能因为
So you'll see in the video, here she is supporting some case management cases. So individuals and families with challenging circumstances who Tzu Chi volunteers go to support personally. And another one of our translation volunteers, Sharon, is also in the video there that you can see. Either one of our translation volunteers or just one of the Tzu Chi volunteers.
哪一个有没有找到他就这个拿到一个，其他他其实是一个报道的人哈，所以我们。
And in this video and photo, you can see just Sister Huiling by herself in this shot. So let us go today to Sydney, where Sister Huiling is, and listen to her sharing. Dharma Master Chen Yin, Masters at the Abode, and Tzu Chi family all around the world. Good morning and evening. I am Huiling from Australia, specifically Sydney. And what I want to share today, the topic is the conjured city of Sydney. And when I say conjured city, I'm referring to what's referred to as the conjured city, or maybe translated as the phantom city in the Lotus Sutra.
就是刚才你们有没有在影片里面看到那个潮汕的影片里面有一个石炳龙的老菩萨，他拿着衣裳的竹子，在很虔诚的在潮汕。那个影片是我去年潮汕的时候，我是第一次做那个被分配到做那个录影的工作的，所以这个徐奶奶她去年见识已经碰过了，今年她是培训，她已经80岁，她发愿就是要做上人的弟子，
So what I want to start off sharing is actually something that I hadn't specifically prepared in my content. Earlier, there was a video about a volunteer at what I would call a pilgrimage event. And that was a volunteer who I was connected to previously and who has since, I believe, left the world. So I wanted to acknowledge this and call out her story. So back to our main topic, what exactly is this conjured city that we speak of? So in the Lotus Sutra, we talk about how the conjured city or the phantom city, there could be many different translations. It's something that was not originally there, but suddenly came to be. So what are some examples of that? For example, in Sydney, there are many Siji events that we hold and host. Here on the screen, you'll see this is a lot of Siji volunteers and myself walking into the community and providing support, such as in the form of providing food. Now, for me personally, sharing about Siji is my mission and my responsibility. When I participate in disaster relief events, I always take the opportunity to share with these disaster relief victims about the importance of plant-based diets and also about the story of Jinx's aphorisms. And in other events, when we're in the community, I will often share about Siji as an organization, as well as some of the Da'ai products that Siji produces. In March, in Australia, there were a few weeks where it was just constantly raining. So around Brisbane and the Golden Coast, there was very serious flooding. Even in Sydney, there were certain areas that were also flooding. Because of this, we had multiple rounds of going to help local residents clean up their homes from the damage of the flooding, which included, giving them encouragement and helping to collect donations to help them recover. Now, the flooding was very intense, and you could actually see that there was a lot of heavy objects and even, for example, wood from trees that would float into residents' homes. And we would help, we as the volunteers would help to clean up the homes, pick up a lot of the trash, and put it outside to wait for the city government to come and collect all of the trash. And a lot of the furniture in the homes actually were completely destroyed by the flooding and could no longer be used. Now, when we were giving for these disaster relief victims, we were able to give them several forms of support. In addition to helping them clean up the homes, we also shared with them disaster relief emergency financial aid in the form of cash or maybe via debit cards, but effectively cash assistance. And we also shared with them, for example, the story of the very famous Siji blankets that are made from recycled plastic bottles, as well as the story of the bamboo banks, piggy banks. And when sharing these stories, this really touched a lot of the folks who were affected by the flooding, and we're very sad to part with the volunteers. One of those folks who we helped out, they actually were affected by flooding previously as well. And so they already knew about Siji and actually specifically hoped for Siji to come help them. And when they received our aid again this year, you could see that that individual and that family, or that individual, that resident was so touched and had tears in his eyes. So every week, again, to support the flooding efforts, we would go to different communities and neighborhoods to help the residents. And if we see places in the community that were affected or damaged, we try to help clean it. And if folks needed, for example, new furniture, we would share the news with others and try to provide that furniture for them as well. And then we would, of course, provide assistance in the form of food to different communities as well.
慧玲要注意时间哦，感恩是。
我们以前的人文学校的校长啊。
Okay, so Siji in Sydney in Australia has already been there for about 30 years, and so a lot of the images we see of the past, right? A lot of the folks who were our volunteers from many years ago. At this point, they have become more elderly. We'll see that it's harder for them to move around on their own. But even then, we do what we can to help these more senior volunteers to continue creating fields of blessings and to continue volunteering with Siji. So every year or every month when we have a chance, we work with these elderly volunteers to help around, for example, the Siji offices. And we also try to help our younger volunteers have opportunities to learn through taking action as well. And including this gives them an opportunity to work with our senior volunteers as well. From when I joined the book study myself as a volunteer, I really found that my personality has changed a lot. In the past, I really was not a fan of public speaking, but now I have a couple of opportunities a month to speak and to practice. And I've also had the opportunity to meet and learn from so many of the other translation volunteers as well. So here you can see some of our other younger volunteers and their contributions as well. So all along in my journey in Siji, Dharma Master Zheng Yin has continued to be my guide and has never given up on me. I met Siji many years ago and supported the medical mission through, for example, donating to support just more beds for patients. When I came to Australia, for some time, that connection with Siji had stopped for a while, but then afterwards, through book studies and through listening to audio recordings, I had the opportunity to reconnect with Siji. And actually, I think today we're at this point short on time, so I think we're going to have to finish up the session for today. You'll actually see here in the photos is actually the office in Sydney. There are beautiful flower beds and gardens at the Siji office. And Sister Huiling is a volunteer who is really touches us, whether it's English or Cantonese or even the language of Nepal, I think Nepali. She participates in either oral or written translation for these languages. So really touched by her. Let's once again thank her for sharing with us today. So here we actually have some more comments.